Welcome to OOTO, the Out of the Office Investigation. Today, we're heading deep into the Amazon to investigate a mystery that could change the way we think about food, health, and the Earth itself.
And it all kicks off with this giant puzzle, the Amazonian paradox. You picture the Amazon, right? You see this incredible, vibrant explosion of life. It's the most lush rainforest on Earth. But here's the crazy part. It's growing on some of the absolute poorest soil you can imagine.
It really is a head-scratcher. For the most part, the soil there is this toxic, nutrient-stripped red clay. It's called an oxisol. And basically, thousands of years of insane heat and torrential rain have just washed away anything good. All the nutrients aren't really in the soil. They're locked up in the living plants and trees.
Exactly. So if you try to clear that land to form it, like people have been doing, you might get one, maybe two decent harvests. But after that, it's game over. The soil is barren. And yet, scattered all through this impossible landscape, archaeologists started finding these pockets of something totally different. Something dark, rich, and almost magically fertile.
And I mean, the difference is like night and day. You can see it right here. On one side, you've got that typical Amazonian dirt we were talking about, yellowish red clay, totally barren after a couple of harvests, super low in nutrients.
And on the other side, Terra Preta the Indio. It translates to Black Earth of the Indian. It's this deep, dark, incredibly rich soil. But here's the part that blew scientists' minds. It's remained fertile for over 2,000 years. 2,000. It was this complete anomaly that for the longest time, nobody could figure out.
So as people started mapping the Amazon, they kept finding these islands of fertility. Some were pretty small, maybe an acre or so. Others were huge, covering dozens of hectares. Some patches were just a few inches deep, but others went down 6 feet with this amazing black earth. And here was the crucial clue. They weren't random. They were always found near the sites of ancient pre-Columbian human settlements. So it became pretty obvious this wasn't some natural fluke of geology. No way, this soil was engineered. It was man-made.
And we're talking about an ancient technology. Radiocarbon dating shows the earliest versions of this started around 7,000 years ago. By about 2,500 years ago, it was a widespread, sophisticated practice that supported these huge, complex societies. And that just completely changed everything we thought we knew, Jordan. The old thinking was that the Amazon could only support these small nomadic tribes. But this Black Earth proved that millions of people, some estimates say up to 10 million, thrive there. They weren't just surviving, they were actively shaping the environment to sustain themselves. It's just incredible. And then, tragically, around 500 years ago, European contact happened. Disease and conflict wiped out over 90% of the population. And in that collapse, this amazing knowledge was just lost. It stayed a secret buried in the ground until 1966, when a Dutch scientist named Wim Sombroek finally put the pieces together and proposed that this super soil was entirely man-made. Okay, so if it was man-made, the next big question was, how'd they do it? What was the recipe? So scientists started analyzing samples of Terra Preta, and they found this really consistent list of ingredients that were clearly intentionally added generation after generation.
They found what you might expect, food scraps, animal and fish bones for calcium and phosphorus. They also found huge amounts of broken pottery shards, which is interesting. But the one thing holding it all together, the absolute secret ingredient, was charcoal.
That's right, charcoal. Simple, ancient, and it turns out unbelievably effective. Terra Preta has up to 70 times more charcoal than the soil around it. But, and this is the key, it wasn't just any old charcoal from a campfire. The real genius was in how they made it.
Yes, this is so important. They understood something that we're only just now relearning. The typical way of clearing land, slash and burn, where you just set everything ablaze, that's incredibly destructive. It kills the soil. But they did something way, way smarter.
They practiced what we now call slash and char. So instead of a hot, raging fire that just turns everything to ash, they used a slow, smoldering burn with very little oxygen. This process, it's called pyrolysis, doesn't create fragile ash. It creates a stable, carbon-rich charcoal. And that's the whole game right there. One method, slash and burn, it depletes the soil. The other, slash and char, actually builds soil. It's regenerative. They would take this special charcoal and then mix it into the ground with all the other organic stuff from their daily lives.
So here it is, the complete recipe. You've got the low-temp charcoal, what we now call biochar, as the foundation. And then all the other goodies,
Those pottery shards, they weren't just garbage. They add structure, creating little air and water pockets so the soil doesn't get compacted.
The bones act like a slow-release fertilizer, adding phosphorus over time. And then all the other organic waste, food scraps, manure, human waste from their villages, that was the charge. It loaded the charcoal up with all the nutrients needed to kickstart a thriving soil ecosystem. It was a perfect closed-loop system.
Okay, so that's the ancient recipe. But let's get into the modern science of why it works so incredibly well. This ancient wisdom has pretty much kicked off a whole new field of science, and it all revolves around that one key ingredient.
It really has. It wasn't until the early 2000s that scientists really figured out the chemistry behind what makes this stuff so powerful. And they gave it a new, modern name, biochar.
So biochar is what we call this special agricultural charcoal. And the magic is all in that pyrolysis process, heating something organic, like wood, in a low-oxygen environment.
When you do that, you don't get ash, you get this incredibly porous carbon structure that is super, super stable. What that means is it doesn't break down. I mean, regular compost is gone in a few years. The carbon in biochar can stay in the soil doing its job for hundreds, even thousands of years. It's basically permanent.
And this is where the science just gets wild. Because of how it's made, the internal structure of biochar is like a crystal sponge, with a surface area that is just massive.
Okay, get ready for this. 1 single gram of biochar, that's smaller than a sugar cube, can have an internal surface area of 9,000 square feet. That is almost the size of 2 basketball courts, in 1 gram. It's that hidden surface area that gives it all its power.
So what do you do with 2 basketball courts of surface area? Well, first, it acts like a sponge for water, which is huge in a place like the Amazon with torrential rain. It just soaks it up and releases it slowly to plants. Second, it's a nutrient magnet. The carbon has this natural charge that literally grabs onto nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus and stops them from washing away. It holds them right there for the plants. And maybe the most important thing of all, it's a luxury high-rise hotel for microbes. Billions of them. All the good bacteria and fungi that make soil healthy get a safe place to live, protected from predators. And that's what makes it self-renewing. As those microbes live and die inside the biochar, they continuously add new organic matter back into the soil. It becomes this living, self-sustaining ecosystem that actually grows over time.
You're listening to OOTO with research by El Campesino de la Huerta. Okay, so this is an amazing piece of history, an incredible bit of science. But why are we investigating it now? Well, because this ancient wisdom is a powerful solution to the massive problems we've created with our modern industrial food system.
Exactly. For the last 100 years or so, we've treated soil like it's just dead dirt. A thing to hold plants up while we pump them full of synthetic fertilizers. We've totally ignored the fact that it's a living, breathing ecosystem, and now we're paying the price.
And that price has a direct impact on our health. I mean, look at this chart. It shows a huge drop in the minerals found in 43 different vegetables between 1950 and 1999. We're talking less calcium, less iron, less vitamins in the exact same foods.
The food we eat today is literally not as nutritious as the food our grandparents ate, and it's a direct result of our depleted soils. We've stripped out the life that used to transfer all those minerals and nutrients into our plants. It's really simple. Healthier soil grows healthier food.
And this table just lays it all out so clearly. You have the industrial model on one side. Monoculture crops like corn and soy get turned into ultra-processed foods. The result? Depleted soil and a clear link to chronic disease and poor gut health.
Then you have the regenerative model, inspired by systems like Terra Preta. It's all about diversity, building soil, and producing whole, nutrient-dense foods. And the science is showing a direct connection to disease prevention and a healthy, diverse human microbiome. The life in our soil is directly connected to the life in our gut.
So here's the best part of this whole story. This isn't just an ancient history lesson. We can use these exact same principles right now. We can create our own version, Terra Preta Nova, and start building permanent fertility in our own backyards.
Right. This is the most empowering piece of the whole investigation. This is not some expensive high-tech solution. It's an ancient, accessible technology that anyone can use to start healing the soil right under their feet. So let's talk about how to actually do it.
First things first, you need the biochar. You can buy it, sure, but you can also make it yourself really easily. The cone pit method is one of the simplest ways. You just dig a cone-shaped pit, start a small fire in the bottom, and then slowly layer on bigger pieces of wood. The trick is to watch the top layer. Once it turns black and then gets a thin coating of white ash, that's your cue to stop. You then have to douse the entire pit with water, and I mean drown it. You want to stop the burning instantly. Once it cools down, that black, lightweight stuff left over, that's your homemade biochar. But, and this is huge, you're not done yet. There is one more absolutely critical step.
Okay, I cannot say this loud enough. This is the most important rule if you try this. You have to charge your biochar before you put it in your garden. Remember how we called it a superabsorbent sponge? Well, if you put that powerful, empty sponge in your soil, it's immediately going to start sucking up all the nutrients around it to fill itself. It will literally starve your plants before it helps them. You have to fill that sponge up with goodies before it goes into the ground.
So how do you charge it? It's easy. First, crush it up into smaller, pebble-sized pieces. Then you have two great options. Method A, probably the best way, is to just mix the crushed biochar right into a fresh compost pile. As the compost breaks down, the char will get filled with nutrients and microbes.
Or, method B is the fast track. You just soak the biochar in a nutrient-rich liquid. Compost tea is great, liquid seaweed fertilizer works, you can soak it for a few days or a couple of weeks.
Once it's fully charged and saturated, you just mix it into your garden beds. You don't need a ton. About a 10 to 25% ratio of biochar to soil is perfect. And the best part? You only have to do this once. That biochar is now a permanent part of your soil.
You're listening to OOTO with research by El Campesino de la Huerta.
You know, when you take a step back, Terra Preta is so much more than just a cool gardening trick. It's living proof that humans don't have to be a destructive force on the planet. We are capable of creating systems that aren't just sustainable, but are truly regenerative. Systems that get richer and more alive over time. It's really about adopting a different mindset, isn't it? It's moving away from this idea of extraction and hypergrowth and towards a slow growth mindset that's focused on building resilience and fertility for the long haul. It's about regenerating our soil, our health, and our communities from the ground up.
And that brings us to what might be the most profound connection of all. This quote here highlights what scientists are now calling the co-development of biodiversity. Basically, the diversity of life in our environment, especially our soil, is directly tied to the diversity of life inside our own bodies, our gut microbiome.
Think about that. As we've sterilized our environment with chemical farming, we've simultaneously damaged our own internal ecosystems. And this is being linked to everything from allergies to autoimmune issues and even our mental health.
Which means the opposite is also true. When we take a simple step to restore the life and biodiversity in our soil, we are taking a direct, tangible step toward restoring the critical biodiversity inside ourselves. Playing in healthy dirt is good for your gut.
The ancient Amazonians knew this. They understood that by feeding the soil, they were securing the future for generations to come. And it leaves us with a really powerful question for our own time.
Right. In our search for all these high-tech fixes for climate change, for our health crises, what if one of the most powerful solutions has been right here the whole time, just waiting to be rediscovered?
What if healing ourselves and healing our planet doesn't start in a lab, but begins right under our feet?